two breaches at two major banks with the information of thousands of customers potentially compromised. Susan Prince is on the story. So Susan, what do we know about these attacks today?
Well, what we know so far is they started on the weekend, and both CIBC and the Bank of Montreal had these hacks on their accounts. These modern-day robbers basically go in and look at getting your personal information and your account information. In the case of CIBC, it's with their owned bank, Simplii Financial, and it looks like about 40,000 accounts where there was an attempt to get the data on those. The Bank of Montreal has said that it's a limited number of their accounts, but they haven't specified the number. So what we're looking at is that the attacks were attempted to be made and were thwarted, and now both of the banks are letting their customers know exactly what the problem is. And if we take a look, the Simplii Bank, here's what they had to say about it. They said, "We feel that it is important to inform our clients so that they can take additional steps to safeguard their information." In the case of the Bank of Montreal, what they felt was that this attack originated from outside the company, and they said, "We took steps immediately when the incident occurred, and we have confidence that the exposure identified related to customer data has been closed off." So they both banks feel like they've got it under control, but felt that they had a responsibility to let their customers know.
So what is Simplii telling its customers to do?
Well, they're talking really about bank hygiene, looking after your accounts. So some of the things you should be doing as to be responsible on your end of things is make sure that your passwords are complicated. Don't use something as simple as 12345 or your street address. Second of all, monitor your accounts so that you notice right away if there's been unusual activity. And if you see that, then report that activity immediately to the bank. Let them know so that they can solve a small problem instead of a bigger problem.
And are we hearing from the other big banks? Are they also seeing attacks?
Well, we've reached out to the other banks and we'll continue to monitor that. But so far, they have not said whether or not they are seeing any problems on their own, or we've not heard yet back from them. But we're continuing to monitor that.
To talk more about this, I'm joined by Claudio Papa. He is the president of Data Risk Canada and a security, privacy, and cyber fraud risk advisor. All right, so Claudio, what do you think of that? Two banks in the last couple of days with these warnings about data breaches.
It certainly is a big deal, and it is unprecedented. We haven't had two banks being hacked in Canada in a long time, and then had them turn around and reveal that fact to the public. Generally speaking, these are veiled under secrecy, and most banks deal with breaches and any sort of fraudulent events internally. And as you know, most people get called in, they get a new card, and away they go. But this is a public statement, and a public statement which apparently has prompted a second public statement by the second bank to announce a similar event that occurred on the weekend. So it leads us to believe that it's the same group that has perpetrated the crime.
So why do you think they're doing this? Why do you think they are going public and saying that this has happened?
Well, pure conjecture. However, it appears, and most of the habits of cyber criminals are to call the companies that have been breached and let them know that they are in possession of this evidence, demonstrate, so show the evidence, show that here, here's a subset of the information that we stole, and we're going to go public with it, and your good name will be impacted. So companies typically don't have a choice. The simple choice that they have is either to pay or to go
some
public.
kind of ransom, like ransomware, right?
Exactly. So this is cyber extortion, of course. And so some companies pay and maintain the secrecy of that. But for that to happen, you would have to be able to trust those criminals. Obviously, our Canadian banks cannot trust these cyber criminals, so they chose to go public, and that was the right approach, to go public and to go public quickly. So to turn around and report it the next day is an excellent course of action. And of course, to say that you're standing behind any kind of financial losses is also a very good approach.
How worrisome do you think it is, though, for the thousands of customers that could be affected by this, could have their personal information stolen, or could have some financial account information stolen?
It's massive. So at the very least, we're looking at tens of thousands of Canadians. So at the very least, we're looking at 40,000. And these 40,000 individuals are going to have to scrutinize their bank accounts, their statements, their credit statements. And of course, they won't be able to, as if they could before, but they won't be able to trust emails coming from banks. So any emails coming from a banking institution, most Canadians have by now received phishing emails from banks pretending to be closing their accounts unless they click on a link. Well, going forward, they certainly cannot trust such emails, even if, in fact, some of those emails don't contain links and contain phone numbers, because cyber fraudsters are getting more and more sophisticated in their approaches to targeted cyber fraud.
So do you have any advice for people who are worried about this kind of thing?
Oh, absolutely. So the advice here is to, whenever you receive an email from what appears to be a financial institution, to pick up the phone and call the number in your banking package. So the banking package that you've received when you certainly open a bank account, or the well-known phone number of the bank that you deal with. Or the best approach is to simply go into your branch. If you can go into your branch and settle things, that's the best approach. Certainly clicking on links is a bad idea. Generally speaking, even opening emails is a bad idea, because oftentimes the fraudulent senders can tell that you have in fact opened that email. And so just that simple action can let them know that they're having some success.
Do you think we're going to see more and more of this?
Well, I think it's just the beginning. We're not sure whether these are the only two Canadian banks that have been hit this way. We know that Canadian banks should have, in fact, had multi-factor access to for customers and for clients to access their online dashboards. People deserve to be able to protect their own accounts using more than just a simple password. And so if that password is stolen, anyone can log in. That shouldn't be the case. The case should be that you need a password and a code, and that's a very simple thing to do. And most internet users nowadays are familiar with two-factor authentication just by getting a code on your cell phone and inputting it. That code only works once, and so if your email or password gets lost, unauthorized individuals cannot log into your account. So that's a very simple tip.
Great to talk to you on this. Thank you for
Absolutely.
those tips. That is Security Risk Advisor Claudia Papa with me here in the studio.